1,000-pound Tammy Slaton loses 500 pounds, sister nearly crashes into tree while learning to drive. Tammy Slaton finally gets behind the wheel. People's exclusive clip from Tuesday's episode of 1,000 pound. The 38-year-old is traveling with her brother Chris, who helps her drive the golf cart. Chris tells Tammy to drive away, warning her don't kill me as she holds on to a pole as they make a few sharp turns. When you drive off, it kind of feels good, she says. Oh, don't worry, buddy. Just do it. Get it done. Tammy panics when she almost hits a tree with her car and has to brake at the last minute. Chris calmly reminds her to hit the brake pedal in time and urges her back into the driveway. It's still scary, but I just have to remember to breathe and not panic, especially if there's a tree coming up, she jokingly says. After a while of riding the gold cart, Chris asks Tammy if she'd like to try again. Maybe a few more years. I guess I'll just have to get used to it. Let's put it off for a few more years, she replies, laughing, as Chris shakes his head in annoyance. I'm proud of myself, and I'm glad I decided to take a drive today, but when it comes to cars, that's a bit of a stretch, Tammy adds in a confessional. Chris tells Tammy that she doesn't need to wait years, that she needs to get her driver's license soon so she can be more independent and do the things she wants to do. I don't understand why Tammy doesn't want to learn to drive because she knows how frustrating it is to wait or call for a ride, he says. Maybe it's the fear that she won't need anyone. She went from being bedridden and needing 24-hour care to being able to do anything she wants. And learning to drive is the last piece of the puzzle. Chris adds, telling his sister, "There's nothing holding you back except fear." Tammy Slaton of 1,000 pound sisters says she wants to learn to drive after losing 440 pounds. Weight loss. The 37-year-old recently celebrated losing enough weight to fit in the front seat of a car and wear a seat belt. Tammy Slaton has high hopes for getting behind the wheel. On Sunday, the 37-year-old star of 1,000 pound sisters posted a TikTok video in response to a follower who said she'd been following her weight loss since the beginning. He asked the reality star if he'd lost enough weight to sit in the front seat of a car and drive, or if he'd like to learn to drive. "I would love to learn it eventually, but right now I'm a little too scared. There's a lot going on, but it's only happening in small steps," she said. "I've driven a golf cart before, and sure, not as fast. But I'd love to drive a car one day." The fan's question came just after Tammy celebrated losing enough weight to be able to sit in the front seat of a car and fasten her seatbelt. Sisters documented. A milestone featured in 1,000 pounds. When Tammy was home with her brother, Chris, he suggested that she sit in the front seat of the car because she'd lost so much weight. "I'm going to have you sit in the front seat today, is that okay?" Chris asks. Yes, she replies reluctantly. "I'm not sure if I can fit between the door and the console. The last time I sat in the front was probably 15 or 20 years ago. But I'd like to try it and see what happens," Tammy says. Chris then jokes that he'd squish them both in the car and that as long as the door is closed, it'll be fine. Tammy hesitantly gets out and uses her walker to get to her car. Her demeanor changes as she sits in the front seat and buckles her seatbelt. "I did it," she says with a big smile. When Tammy actually realizes that she's sitting in a chair and that she can drive away and close the door, you can see she feels amazing about the little battle she just won, because even in the 16 movie, she couldn't sit in a chair and buckle her seatbelt and sit in the front seat, Chris says in the clip. "Now, let's go like grape hoppin', baby. When you sit in the front seat, it's like a whole new world," Tammy adds. "You experience everything from a different perspective. You're not the second person to see something, you're the first, she said, laughing. At the time, Tammy spoke about how losing weight has changed her life, and the other milestones she's achieved since she lost 200 kilograms from her peak weight of 335 kilograms. In July 2022, she underwent bariatric surgery and now weighs just 129 kilograms. One of the big changes I've had in the last year is probably a small thing for most people, she told People. But for me it was so big. I just went from being able to walk without a walker or being in a wheelchair and not having oxygen. I no longer sleep with it on at night, she boasted. It fitted into the front seat of a regular car then, and then into the seat belt buckle. That's a small thing to some people, but a big thing to me. Now I don't have to use an extender,